I have a rendezvous with death. We'll preserve the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato. You can find all we do at undergroundusa.com. So how much of a complete asshole is Mitch McConnell? Well, I can argue that he is an emotion-exploiting deep state K-Street whore of a magnanimous proportion. Put succinctly, he's quite an asshole. Anyone who listens regularly understands how much I loathe McConnell, a demonstrated Republican in name only, who clings to his lust for power and control like Charleton Heston clung to his Second Amendment rights. McConnell, the titular head of the deep state Republican Gang of Six, comprised of himself and U.S. Senators Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, John Curtis, Lindsey Graham, and John Thune, recently took a shot at Trump Health and Human Secretary's nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the issue of vaccines and the vaccine approval process. Kennedy, many would argue, is a bit more informed on the issue of vaccines than Mitch the Sino-Bitch, who, with regard to COVID vaccines, now proven to be chock full of side effects and absent the promise of immunity, infamously stated this.
I can say as a Republican man, as soon as it was my turn, I took the vaccine. I would encourage all Republican men to do that.
And?
It was a modern medical miracle. That doesn't work if people don't get vaccinated. So for whatever influence I can have over those decisions, I want to encourage everyone to get the vaccine.
And?
These shots need to get in everybody's arm as rapidly as possible, or we're going to be back in a situation in the fall that we don't yearn for, that we went through last year.
Now, the oracle of rhinoism and purveyor of pseudoscience is feigning a superior scientific intellect in attacking a Kennedy ally, Aaron Siri, singling out Siri's questioning of one vaccine to blanket suspicion over the whole of his opposition to Big Pharma's addiction to profiteering off of vaccine creations for anything and everything the commercial marketeers can concoct, all under the guise of protecting the American public. McSino Rhino said this.
For decades, I have been proud to work with devoted advocates, from Rotary International to the Gates Foundation, and use my platform in public life to champion the pursuit of cures for further generations. I have never flinched from confronting specious disinformation that threatens the advance of life-saving medical progress, and I will not today. Efforts to undermine public confidence in proven cures are not just uninformed. They're dangerous. Anyone seeking the Senate's consent to serve in the incoming administration would do well to steer clear of even the appearance of association with such efforts.
So, the 82-year-old, whose own physical capabilities have informed him that he shouldn't be navigating the halls of power, let alone doing it on behalf of the people of Kentucky or the United States, is using his position to coerce those who weren't duped by the pseudoscience of the COVID vaccine movement into being just as ignorant in their thinking as he and his profit-motivated rhino deep state compatriots? I don't think so, Tim. In fact, this is just more evidence of the need, the intense need, for the American people and their duly elected representatives, by virtue of the established Trump mandate, to turn the page on the opportunistic politics of the McConnell-Pelosi era. It's time for those two reprobates and their henchmen and women to vaporize from public life. I mean, really, haven't they done enough damage to the American political system over the years? Haven't they enriched themselves to saturation at the taxpayer-funded governmental monetary feed trough? So, to answer my own question, I guess McConnell is an asshole of historical proportion. And we should all be pretty sick and tired of his slurred bullshit. When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station WGUL, AM 930 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is often laced into illicit drugs and used to make fake versions of prescription pills. You can't see it, taste it, or smell it. Suppliers mix fentanyl into their products because it's potent and cheap, and the dealer might not even know. Keep yourself and others safe by knowing the real deal on fentanyl. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com.
State Farm says they're a good neighbor. But would a good neighbor target 5-year-olds for conversations about sexual identity? State Farm did. For 6 months, they asked employees to donate guides to being transgender to public schools. Books aimed at making kindergartners question their identity. How do parents know where State Farm put these books? What's State Farm doing about it? Visit AskStateFarmWhy.com.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
You know, Frank, there's a lot to talk about, obviously. I want to ask your opinion, of course, about the drones. There's more coming in about the shooter and the aftermath of how people are reacting to all that. But just a quick question, because, of course, in California, we had the Santa Ana wind event earlier in the week. It was a pretty good one. And the Malibu fire continues to burn. Several homes have been lost. But a lot of times in the news, Frank, they'll tell us the fire is such and such a percentage contained. In this case, it's at about 30% contained. But that's not, is that the perimeter of the fire, the area of where the fire was covered, or how does that really relate when they tell you that on the news?
Well, a percentage indicates how much of the fire's perimeter is encircled by what's called a control line. Mm-hmm. When a wildfire is described as being a certain percentage contained, it refers to the portion of the fire's perimeter that's been surrounded by a control line where the fire's unlikely to spread further.
Oh, okay. Very, very interesting, because it can be a little misleading, because you hear this percentage number and you think, well, more is better, but where it's actually happening with the fire. And of course, folks, we ask Frank these kinds of questions because Frank is a retired firefighter and is a great resource, obviously, here on the show. And but I appreciate that. I'm sure everybody else does as well, Frank.
Yeah, I was more an urban and suburban type of firefighter, but then you have to learn about everything. It's important to distinguish between containment and control. Containment doesn't mean that the fire's extinguished. It specifically refers to that perimeter line.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting indeed. Yeah. Well, and I just mentioned the drones as well. And at this point, Frank, maybe we should call the fire department. I mean, at least they'd be decisive and try something with these drones.
At least make it hunting season.
Right.
You can't tell me. Yeah, I mean, and I refuse to believe it. If someone said, "Well, I've never heard of such a thing," I'd say, "Well, then you really don't understand how our technology and sector within the government works. You can't tell me we do not have the technology to jam signals to those drones to make them fall from the sky."
Right,
and that's exactly what we should do with that, because this has the stink of Chinese spy balloon all over it.
Oh yeah. And well, Kirby was asked by Jackie Heinrich from Fox News in the press briefing room, you have your own pictures of this? And he said, we don't have government pictures. We just look at the pictures that you guys are, the media, or I guess we see on TV. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, we don't. And the NSA doesn't listen to anybody. We don't know. It's we there's drones? Really? Well, I haven't looked at CNN this morning, so I really don't know what's going on in the world. I only work in the federal government.
Right.
You know, these people are such prolific liars when it comes to being honest with the people. Well, you know, maybe they don't want to spark panic among people, you know, because these drones are flying all over the place. Or maybe it's because they don't want to telegraph to the public that they don't really care. If someone like, I don't know, Iran or China or Russia is taking a look at what's underneath these drones, which from what I understand ranges from sensitive military installations to our nuclear submarines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but this idea that we're stupid enough to believe, really? Well, we've got no satellites in space that can actually see these things. Well, we have no technology that could track them. Really? Because that's funny. Israel does, to the point where they can knock them out of the sky.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Why are you selling me this line of BS? Is it, or are you just phoning it in for the last so many days of your administration until you can actually take advantage of the blanket pardons and disappear?
Right. Well, but again, you know, because we're so close to the next administration, can an event like what we're witnessing with these drones be some sort of precursor to something else that would be an evolving worse problem for Donald Trump? It's kind of like a got you last, you know, going out the door, and now look what Donald Trump's got to do. You know, he has to deal with this now.
Well, but he will. That's the point. And I think all of this will start to disappear once he's sworn in again on January 20th. Because they know that there will be a response to this. This is a parting middle finger from the faux community in the world to the United States and the Biden administration, because they know he's a pussy. And he won't do anything unless it's give money to people who chant death to America every day.
Mm-hmm.
This guy has been the worst thing that's ever happened to the United States as far as sovereignty and defense is concerned in the history of our country. He makes Carter look like Patton.
It is Friday, and we're already having fun. I hope everybody's got some great weekend plans. But, you know, Frank, of course, we were talking about those drones, but something else that I think is just quite sickening is the fact that people are lauding the shooter from New York City. I think we talked a little bit about that during our time on Monday. But now the McDonald's workers that were working at the time when they called 911, the police came in Altoona, Pennsylvania, they have to have security details now, evidently.
Yeah, what have we come to? That's just ridiculous. I mean, that's just ridiculous. What kind of an intellectual barbarian decides to take their backwards thinking out on somebody who's just going to work at a McDonald's?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, exactly. But it could have been anywhere. I mean, he could have been at the Waldorf Astoria or something. I mean, it's so sick that, okay, well, now they're somehow now responsible for our big hero to now be in chains, that kind of thing.
But why is the guy a hero?
Right.
I mean, this is the point. I get you could, it's okay to say, boy, I can understand his motivation. I can understand why he might want to do something like that, but you've got to be enough of a human being with a level of ethics and morality to say you don't go around assassinating people. Because of somebody's job. This guy's job was the CEO. He doesn't go out and say, how do we screw the people today? He's running a major corporation. He's not a villain in Gotham. He wasn't a villain in Gotham because he's dead now.
Yeah.
So if If you're celebrating the death of a human because you don't like the state of affairs in the health insurance industry, then you're a lazy coward. Do something about it. And that doesn't require locking and loading and taking another human being's life.
Well, Frank,
start organizing. The left organizes when they don't like stuff, and they change legislation and create legislation, and things change. That's how the Obamacare came to be, because people were so motivated about and I don't agree with Obamacare. Okay, I think it's wrong all the way around. But that's how you change something. You don't go out and buy ammunition and a weapon and stalk somebody on the street and shoot them 3 times in the back. I don't care if you could put together a manifesto or not. And quite frankly, with the advent of AI, you could probably sit in front of your computer in your pajamas and spout out, okay, AI, make me a 7,000-page manifesto about why I hate the healthcare industry. It doesn't make you an intellect.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're just using some tool somebody else created. But, Frank, one of the things I was thinking about with this whole thing, there is a tie-in to how, people have been dehumanized. Obviously, the shooter dehumanized Brian Thompson, and he was just somebody to go kill. But there is the same rhetoric we've heard from the Democrat Party elite, the far left. Donald Trump is Hitler, so it's okay to try to take out Hitler. But also something else occurred to me too, Frank, and that is the idea of mob rule. They keep talking about democracy. Well, it devolves, if it's not a republic like we have, into mob rule. And this is what we're seeing. We're going to go get the McDonald's employees now. Here comes the mob, that kind of stuff.
Well, this is exactly why the founders and the framers didn't give us a democracy. They hated pure democracy because it doesn't protect the rights of the minority. They hated it. When you think back to the founders and framers in Washington and Jefferson and Hamilton and Adams, when they were confronted with these rebellions, like Shays' Rebellion and the Whiskey Rebellion, which was nothing more than the act of a mob working outside of the new government, they put them down because it didn't respect the rights of the whole or the minority. Vigilante justice doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The rule of law breaks down. And when the rule of law breaks down, government breaks down, because that's the number one and really only job of a government, is to establish and maintain the rule of law. It's how we get that law that matters. Is it a monarchy? Is it a democracy? Is it a republic? We're a constitutional republic because we have representation or we're supposed to anyway. We have representation in how the rule is defined and enforced. Now, we've gotten away from that because we've given too much power to idiot celebrities and talking heads on opinion shows. And we now have an elected class that are whores to the class, to the entertainment news class. They need to have the adoration of the people on the boob tube, instead of having fidelity to the constituents and doing what they were elected to do, which is to represent their constituents. If they were more concerned with that than what Mika and Joe say in the morning, then maybe we'd have a better government. But right now, they're all just a bunch, hopefully this changes in January. But for the most part, and I know I'm using blanket terminology here, so don't call me or write me about your favorite person in Congress who happens to be good and say, how can you throw him in there? Get a life, understand what I'm saying. But our elected class sucks. They're panderers for numbers, and it's all about let's get reelected. And in that mindset, in that way of thinking, I've got a lot of respect for the people who are walking away, like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Mm-hmm. They went in, and their final act is to give a middle finger to Chuck Schumer on something that he's trying to move. They said, no, we're not doing it. By the way, not coming back. Your game sucks. I'm going home.
Well, exactly. And, but of course, the Democrats in general are trying to give the middle finger to Donald Trump. and set up things. And I think to just try to exacerbate these problems, across the board, so that is much more difficult. But Trump, like you were saying just earlier, Frank, Trump is decisive. He will act. He will do something, and that's the antidote to the Democrats, I think.
Well, let's put it this way: he's walking in with a mandate not only for an electoral college landslide, but a popular vote victory, and he doesn't have to pander to get reelected this time around. He can go in like a wrecking ball, and he should, on offense, not on defense. Don't play their game. Find every weakness that they have and exploit it to the extreme to destroy the machine. I'm not saying destroy the government. I'm saying destroy the deep state bureaucratic machine that these uniparty jerks, and I had to catch myself there, Kyle, that these uniparty jerks have put into place over the last 125 years since the progressives came to town. It's time to get the cancer treatment for the progressive movement. And it's time to give the government back to the people and get it back to a representative government, because right now we don't have one.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. And, some people even take issue with calling Trump a disruptor, but he has to disrupt what the corruption has, what's built up. I mean, he's got to disrupt that system. And so that's why I'm just wondering why people have such a terrible time with that particular term. But he does have to take out what they put in already. Because
it's not a nice thing to say. So we can't call him a disruptor. We have to call him Hitler. Hitler's a nice thing to say. King George thought the revolutionaries were all criminals too.
Yeah, really true.
Happy Friday the 13th.
Oh my goodness. You're absolutely right about that. And you put that together with these drones, I don't know, maybe everybody just stay in bed, get under the covers.
Yeah, you said Jeff Bezos, so I got a little eerie feeling there and checked the date.
Exactly. Well, Joe Biden may give all these blanket pardons, right? At some point, he gave a blanket pardon to his son, but there may be others we don't know yet. But someone who says is not going to give blanket pardons, that's Donald Trump, in relation to the January 6th individuals who were convicted or charged. He's not going to do a blanket. He says he wants to do case-by-case basis, but it's going to start on day one. And something else we also heard, Frank, is that is now the evidently for the IG report, we understand there were some 26 different human sources, as it were, in the crowd that day of January the 6th.
Well, and I'm glad he said he's not giving a blanket pardon, because that would include the people who were there instigating.
Right.
There are people there who did break the law, and it doesn't mean that they should have been held in solitary confinement all this time and denied their constitutional rights to a speedy hearing in a trial before their peers. Their constitutional rights have been violated. Now, if you broke the law, your constitutional rights have been violated, time served should be the punishment, and that's that. This whole thing has been such an exercise of political persecution, I don't know where to begin. But a blanket pardon would mean that you're even giving pardons to the government employees, wink, wink, nod, nod, that were there that the Biden administration has told us weren't there. And those people should be prosecuted. So if we're splitting hairs here with nomenclature, good. Mm-hmm. But the people who just went to redress government and maybe got a little boisterous about it, who were hunted down via face recognition cameras all over the country and dragged back to Washington by the marshals, they need to have restitution to their lives. So I fully expect Donald Trump, and I'm glad it's case by case. Let's find out who the miscreants are. Let's make sure that their names and faces are known by everybody. I'd love to see a cover on the New York Post that had 120 pictures on it of the people who were sent there that day knowing they were going to wreak havoc at the direction of somebody who was elected to office. Again, wink, wink, nod, nod. Mm-hmm. And I want to know who they are. And I want them to feel such heat that they start talking about who told them to do it. Because those people are the ones that should be prosecuted. And that's not tit-for-tat retribution, prosecution that will be happening. That's people being held to the letter of the law. The Democrats have been saying it ever since they took power under Biden. No one's above the law. We're about to find out if that holds water on January 20th, 2025.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Well, Frank, we have the New York mayor was talking with the incoming border czar, Tom Homan, and the photos that have come out of their meeting, it kind of looks like Tom Homan's looking at the mayor kind of saying, I can't believe you're saying what you're saying. But somehow Mayor Adams is saying words to the effect that, well, we just want to get rid of illegal aliens if they're doing crime repeatedly or they're being violent. But everybody else, somehow he sort of, lionizes them. Well, they're fine. They have jobs and are working alongside what he calls long-term New Yorkers. So I guess these are the new terms, I think.
Yeah, Adams is talking out of both sides of his mouth because he doesn't know the lay of the land going forward with Trump coming in. His city is one of the cities who have been most egregious to this. He came out, I believe, yesterday admitting that there's 500,000 children, illegal alien children in his city that they can't find the sponsors for who are supposed to have people here. So you don't come out blazing information like that and then say, but the ones who are actually working, who have jobs who are keeping our economy going, that's okay. Land shark, don't worry about it. That's fine.
Yeah, no kidding. It's just a very, very bizarre time. And you're right. The issue of the children, that in and of itself would be the reason to close the border or make it, secure as possible. But yet the Democrats just kind of let this all go by. It's kind of like, well, we're not a bunch of racists, so we're not going to have a secure border. But I guess these kids keep coming through. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but because it's so terrible.
No, this is the disingenuousness of the people who are touting this open border BS. You can't have a nation without borders, whether they have to be delineated. And immigration, especially for a country like the United States that wants to receive immigrants because that's how we were born, you have to have a way to say, you know what, when you want to empty your prisons and put them on a 747 and land them at O'Hare, we're just not going to let them run out into the city. Mm-hmm. That's not going to happen. We have to have a vetting process to make sure that's not the case. And for whatever reason, whether it's to create an entire new generation of voters down the line, or to pad the DACA rolls, or whatever their reason was to diminish demographics that are already established here, they've just decided they don't care if it's criminals, people. They just don't care. And if you question it, you are a racist. And if you're somebody who's leading the move to question open borders, you're Hitler and a Nazi.
Oh, right. Exactly. Well, and speaking of having a more secure border, unfortunately, Frank, we've got a lot of the materials for the border wall, a lot of the steel, the panels, and so forth, of the actual wall itself that had not yet been installed. That's all going to, and they have been in the process of this for a while, but they're auctioning this stuff off for as little as $5. And talk about, again, trying to do something to the incoming administration.
Yeah, I think we were talking about Trump being described as a disruptor. This is the Biden administration's version of taking the W's off the keyboard.
Yeah.
That happened after the Clinton administration when George W. Bush came into office. This is the childish BS to thwart the will of the people. Now, they can say it's Donald Trump wants to build a wall all he wants. The majority of people voted for it. This is what the American people want. This is, too bad. You've got a minority of loudmouth people on the left who haven't thought it through, who are okay with Lake and Riley getting murdered. That's the consequence of this open borders thing is crime and 500,000 kids who have no adult supervision. They can't find any spots. This is the result. Not to mention what's coming over the border as far as diseases that weren't here before the Biden administration reoccurring, like tuberculosis. And that's just a fact. Open your eyes and do some research. If you want to go, you can't say that they're disease-ridden people coming over the border. Yeah, I can, because it's the truth. Look it up, educate yourself, and quit being so stupid.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you have a lot of people coming from areas that are incredibly poor and without a lot of the modern medical, availabilities that we have in a first world country. And so, yes,
it's not that they're bad people. They just have a problem. So we have to vet them and scrutinize them. And if their asylum applications mean they should be here, then we got to get them the treatment they need before they come in and affect the population. That's just smart. But we don't have smart in the federal government right now. We've got ideologue in the federal government right now.
Exactly.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Our federal government has been co-opted by the globalist sycophants of the deep state bureaucracy. At every turn, this bureaucracy expands its power over both the American people and the states in which they live. The framers knew corruptible men would one day bastardize their elected authorities and attempt to centralize government in Washington, D.C. That's why they gave us the 9th and 10th Amendments. That's why they left standing the tool of nullification. In his book, Nullification, The Case for Decentralizing the Federal Government, Frank Salvato lays out how states can claw back their constitutionally mandated powers from the overreach of the federal government, doing so in a manner that prevents a second bloody civil war. Get your copy of Nullification, The Case for Decentralizing the Federal Government. Available on Amazon.com in Kindle form and paperback.
If you like the podcast, please head on over to undergroundusa.com. Sign up for our Substack. Comes directly to your email inbox, circumventing the censors and fact checkers and all the rest of those unmitigated assholes. And as we get into Christmas week and the New Year, don't forget to talk politics, current events, religion, and other pertinent subjects with your family, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. When we have these conversations, and when we listen just as much as we speak, we come to realize we've got a lot more in common than we do in difference. And when we realize that e pluribus unum, the deep state doesn't have any control over us anymore, and their political opportunism gets hobbled at the kneecap. That's a really, really, really good thing. You're listening to Underground USA. No fear, no wokeism, no political correctness, and screw the deep state. My name is Frank Salvato.